Great. All right, so the last couple videos, we created our base.html and our index.html, and we learned how this this part right here extends our base.html around our index. We'll later learn how we inject forms into other things as well, but we'll get there when we get there. So, all pretty cool, all pretty straightforward. Again, the syntax for writing Python or Jinja is part of it's like a Python thing. But you can't use block content outside of Flask. PSA. You can't do that on regular files. Has to be Flask using Jinja. But anyways, when we're writing our Python inside of our HTML, we got to use the curly braces with percent signs. We'll see this later. We're going to do some if-else statements in our HTML. But like I said, we'll get there when we get there. Right now, we're going to start populating our routes.py, and soon we'll be able to run our app and look at our homepage. Cool. All right, so on our routes.py, we're going to do from Flask import, not Flask, because we already imported that into the init.py, right? We already pulled in Flask for that one. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to pull in blueprint and render template. Cool, right? And again, this should look familiar. The blueprint one's new, but render template is going to be something that we've already done previously, that we did in our little micro app that we did before this app, our intro to Python app. Okay, and we're going to create a variable site. We're going to set it equal to, and we're going to instantiate the blueprint class. Okay, the blueprint's new. We'll talk about it in a second, but we're going to use site. And then we're going to have name in the middle, under name, okay? And again, this is tying this stuff to our name app here, right? So on our init.py, the dunder name there is connected with this one right here. And then we're going to have template folder equals site templates. All right, and where did that come from? Oh, wait, we remember that's from here, okay? Which just means that the routes that we're going to make here, because we're going to do @site.route, kind of like we did on our little micro app. Now it will know to look for the templates out here. Pretty neat. Saves us some time and headaches. All right. So, again, we want to keep our interests separate, which again, maybe in the back of your brain you're going, well, why did you call it site this time instead of app, right? We're writing an app. Why is it site all of a sudden? And that's because, again, with separation of concerns, separation of interests, these ones are all going to be related to how the website actually ends up rendering, right? What actually shows on the website. And so we're going to keep all of the stuff that's related to that inside of this site folder, okay? And so we'll be able to run a blueprint. Again, this is object-oriented programming. We're often using the ideas of things, right? So we're going to make the idea of this website, but it's not actually going to do anything until our init.py calls upon the site aspect to become created, right? Again, we make a blueprint of a house. It's not an actual house. You can't live in a blueprint, right? So what we're doing here, but when we hand it to a builder, we build the house, we can actually live inside that house. In the same way, we're building the blueprint of our site, and it's not until we hand it to the init.py to actually build the thing that it actually gets created. So again, we're just creating the idea of this right now. It doesn't exist just yet. But here's what we'll do is we're going to create a decorator at site.route. And we're just going to make our little home page, right? Dev home, and we're going to return render template index.html. Okay? I need to have proper Python, and then everyone will be happy. Delightful! That's pretty cool. Now, this won't work quite yet. We still have a couple things to write inside our init.py, but we'll get there in a second. And I'm going to go ahead and work ahead of schedule a little bit. I'm going to do site.route and do our profile. Okay? And so we'll define profile as a function that returns render template, and we're going to have profile.html there. And that should work out just fine. And this is why talking and coding is difficult. And reading, talking, coding, and thinking all at once. Blah, 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 blah. All right. Profile and our homepage. So theoretically, if we got everything else set up, then when we ran Flask, our default page that would load would be our index.html with our base.html extended around it. Cool. Let's go ahead and have a look at our init. And we don't have anything on our profile yet either, by the way. Actually, give me 1 second. All right, cool. So, yeah, profile's empty right now. That's okay. We'll move on. We're going to go have another look at the init file. Woo-woo! So, thus far, we imported Flask, and we made it. But we need to import all of this folder. We need to import this content into our init app. So we're going to have from .site. Notice that now it goes to our site, and then we can look for routes, and we're going to import site. Okay, and again, because our site here is pulling this folder with it, right? We don't have to navigate to these folders because this is actually taking that from the template folder. So these things end up not coming with the site folder, but they come from routes.py as part of this instantiation of the blueprint class. Cool. Back to our init, right? So it's going to pull site. It says it's not accessed, but I don't believe it. It just means that I haven't used it down here yet, so that's all groovy. And after this, we're going to do app.register blueprint, which is another part of this blueprint process. This is where we're actually building the site folder, and we're going to put site in there. And now that's happy, and life is groovy. And we will start testing some of this stuff in a little bit to see how it goes and see what it looks like. But that's how far we're at our init. Our site is basically ready to go. So this was the simplest step, but the site is made, the HTML is written, and we're about that far into it. One other thing I want to do real quick before we start messing around with other stuff is I want to get this static file going. And so I'm going to make a CSS file, and I'm going to make a images. And we should have from our, I have a Google Drive folder that should be shared with you. And we're going to take those images from there, and we're going to put them in to this folder. So I'm going to drag them myself up to images, put them in, right? That's odd. That wasn't what I was expecting. And neither of these is the way they're supposed to be. Well, I will debug that real quick. I'm not pulling it from the Google Drive, I'm pulling it from a different location. So that's probably why it's grouchy. It's probably a security protocol of some sort. But I have the right files for you guys, and you should be able to just download them and put them in there. And that should be good. But I'm actually going to get rid of both of those. Delete them. Yes. I'm going to pause and put the right things in there. Okay, well, weirdly, they still display weird in VS Code, but they render just fine elsewhere. As you can see, these are just fine. That's what we're looking for. And they're in the right location. Not a huge deal. We have a new file inside of our CSS called main.css. Huzzah! And this will be pretty straightforward too. Again, I don't need to explain to you how to write CSS because we already know. We don't need the border thing here because we're not going to be doing that much styling. Most of this will be taken care of with the copy-pasted HTML that I'm delivering for you. And if you want to type this all out, obviously you can pause and do that yourself. But otherwise, we spend a lot of time writing HTML, and that's not the focus of this lesson. So, yeah, all we're doing here is we're just saying, hey, I want Bootstrap to take up the whole screen. We've done this on previous Bootstrap applications where there's just a small automatic margin that for whatever reason gets put in. And then just a little bit of padding at the top, move it down just a little bit. The dark background, not a problem. All right, so there you go. That is all of the static stuff that we need, and we should have, again, this is the right location here. If I want the contact us thing here, like I said, if you want to navigate to it, obviously this is not far enough. I have to go one level further. Whoops. Okay, and now I can go to static, I can go to images, and I can click the contact us one. However that works for you, if yours looks a slight amount different, as long as you're navigated to the right image file, you should be golden. And obviously on other applications that will look a little bit different. Right? And then obviously you need your classes and other stuff. But that should be all groovy. That should be good to go. Let's go ahead and write up our... actually, we'll do this now. We will. there's really not all that much work to it. And we'll talk about what current user email and the email and token stuff there is and how all that stuff is connected. We'll get there when we get there. That stuff is further down the road. Right now it won't render. It will just read that there's funky stuff going on there. But our index and our base.html should both render just fine. So I'm going to stop this, and I'll see you in the next video. We'll run our app and see what it looks like.